welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on August 10th, 2016. I am Dave Biddle. Very happy to be joined by the people's champ, Matt Baxendell. Ohio State's offensive coaching staff seemed to be in disarray for most of last season. We saw them finally come together against Michigan and Notre Dame when Ed Warner joined Tim Beck up in the press box. And Tim Beck was not hired to be the play caller. Ed Warner was supposed to be the play caller. But Ed wanted to be down on the field to talk to his offensive linemen, of course. Well, now this year, of course, they brought in Greg Studrawa to coach the offensive line. They also have Jim Cordell back as grad assistant on the offensive line, which I think is huge. So you'll still have Warner and Beck up in the box like we saw the last two games. Is the disarray now over? Do you think the offensive coaching staff will be on the same page and that will not be an issue this season?
Yeah, I think that's been solved. The issue with this last year was that Warner was the offensive coordinator who was acting like he was still the O-line coach. And Urban didn't want to change it, and he said it himself. He's like, well, we just won a national title, so I didn't really want to change things. But he needed to, and he knew it, and he knows it now. And I think the results that we saw last year with the last two games of the season, with the Buckeyes putting up 40-plus points against the two best teams that they played almost on defense that year, I think that sort of shows what they're capable of doing once the play calling situation has been resolved with the coaches in the booth. So, in my opinion, I don't think it's going to be a problem. You don't have a controversy at quarterback, so you're going to have a guy in Barrett who's the unquestioned leader on this team. You're also going to have a situation where the coaches are finally more comfortable in their roles. And let's face it, Warner proved last year in those two games he can call plays from the box very well. He proved at Kansas he could call plays from the box very well. I have a fair amount of faith in what Ed Warner can do. And, there's a reason people said he was a guy who was going to get consideration for head coaching jobs. People think highly of him. I think Urban just finally decided after the Michigan State debacle that he's still taking the blame for it because he's the boss and he's trying to be a good guy about it. But the blame lies on the shoulders of Tim Beck for that game and always will. Urban knows he needed to put his coaches in a position to succeed. Now they're in a position to succeed. And I don't think play calling is going to be any more of an issue than it was under Tom Herman. We may disagree with individual calls or philosophically, we may think they're running the quarterback too much out of concern for, health and everything for J.T. Barrett. That was one of my criticisms when Herman was here. But I think it's going to be a very different story from last year where it seemed robotic and uninspired. I think you're going to have a much more dynamic situation calling plays where there's only two guys that has to go through, and they'll get the play out quicker, too. And that's something that we didn't see a lot of last year with the tempo offense.
I tend to think some Buckeye fans have selective amnesia when it comes to Tom Herman, and Buckeye fans now look back on Tom Herman with great respect, and rightfully so, and they remember things like how he led. The offense was really clicking there during the national championship season. He goes out with the national championship. He goes to Houston. Look at a great job he did at Houston. Is still doing a great job. The backs, I remember when Tom Herman was at Ohio State, even after wins, after every game, there was a thread on our board complaining about Tom Herman. Oh, there goes Mensa Boy. Oh, this and that. Why is he doing this? Why is he doing that? This is Urban Meyer's offense. I think a lot of times it was Urban telling him, be a little bit more vanilla here. But just talk about that dynamic. Am I remembering this wrong? I think after every game there was like a thread complaining about Tom Herman.
Yeah, I was on it. Let's be real honest here. Tom Herman, I agree with you. I think he's an exceptional coaching, candidate to be a star at one of the power programs as a head coach. I loved what he did at OSU overall. But what do we always say about Tom Herman? From a big picture sense, he was a great coordinator. His team had so much stuff prepared. They were always ready to go. His quarterbacks were on point. But when it got down to crunch time in games, he buttoned up. I think the phrase I used a lot was from Sir Alex Ferguson over in the soccer world, where he called it squeaky bum time. It was quarterback draw time all the time for Tom Herman when it got down to the stretch. Remember the Wisconsin game in 2013? OSU was up 24-7 in that one or something, like 31-14 or something like that. They were up 17 points in that game. And Ohio State ran the most vanilla, boring, run your quarterback up the middle kind of offense possible. Wisconsin really got back in the game. And at the end of the game, we had to recover an onside kick where Christian Bryant broke his leg. And I'll argue till I die that was the play that cost Ohio State the chance to go play for the national championship. Because when Christian Bryant broke his leg that year, Ohio State fell out of the title picture in a realistic fashion because they couldn't stop the pass with Billy Brown and at safety. So, yeah, Tom Herman got too conservative at times. He ran his quarterback too often. There were certain legitimate criticisms about Tom Herman. Remember when J.T. Barrett broke his leg and it was like the most carries or the exact same number of carries in a season that Braxton had before he hurt his shoulder the year before, and both of which were the most carries in OSU history by a quarterback. That was a legit criticism. And so play calling is the easiest thing to complain about, but because if you disagree with one play that doesn't work, that you point at and go, what are they doing? That's terrible, blah, blah, blah. The difference was, under Herman, there was usually a grand strategy. The offense seemed better prepared. From a big picture sense, Tom Herman did a great job. You could complain about certain things that he did in crunch time, but big picture-wise, it was great. Last year, big picture-wise, stunk. And I think that's going to be fixed here. And I think it got fixed, honestly, going up to Ann Arbor with Ed Warner up in the box.
One thing Tom Herman always stressed, and he still does it at Houston, of course, is up-tempo. And he came, and Urban wanted to run up-tempo at Ohio State, and he said Tom wanted to take it to the next level. He wanted to go super up-tempo, ludicrous speed up-tempo. And that seems like one thing that's been the focus of camp so far. It's so early, but talking to J.T. Barrett, talking to Ed Warner, up-tempo seems to be a big focus of this camp. Now, interestingly, on the board, this is a big debate. I figured Ohio State fans would love this, be up-tempo, tire the other team out. Then you have some people that are saying, nah, this is too cute, take your time, get on the same page. Ohio State has the better athletes. They got the bigger offensive line than your defensive line. Just take your time. Don't do this up-tempo stuff. Because I think some fans say just that Ohio State just isn't very fluid when they do it. What's your take on that?
My take is that they stunk it up-tempo last year because you didn't have a quarterback who was established until the very end of the year with JT, and honestly, that was McCardale's strength to go up-tempo. I mean, to me, 2 years ago, I remember Ohio State doing up-tempo pretty darn effectively. I love the idea of trying to blitz a team early in a game, too. If you're Ohio State, you come out and you drop 21 points in the first quarter, it's essentially over, right? So I love the idea of OSU going up-tempo. J.T. Barrett's skill set is perfect for being up-tempo. In my opinion, I love it. We didn't see enough of it last year. And look, all these people who are saying, well, Ohio State's better. Why would we risk our pace? Well, guys, the whole point is that your superior athleticism shines more if your guys are better trained, which we're assuming that anybody who's under Mickey Mariotti is the best trained team in college football. So let's be real blunt there. I think up-tempo is a huge advantage for OSU. And by the way, once you've up-tempoed a team and they're gassed, and you start pounding them with a consistent running game, you saw what Zeke did against Oregon. You saw what they're able to do against a tired defense. The sooner you tire these defenses out, the better it is for Ohio State. So, yeah, I love the tempo thing. And honestly, that's one of the big edges in college football if you can do it right. Not everybody can. That's why having a guy like J.T. Barrett who is capable of doing that is so valuable. I love the tempo. I hope they do a lot of the tempo this year. And I certainly think you're going to see some games where they tempo if it's 28-0 or 28-3 after the first quarter. And the game's essentially over, and then we can get to Joe Burrow time and start talking about 2018.
All right, last topic here. I got a chance to interview Dante Booker yesterday after practice. I could not be more impressed with him. It was really my first time interviewing him, I think, since he was in high school, because if you're a true freshman and you're not playing, you don't get to talk to the media. I don't think they brought him out last year. It's not like it used to be where a media day for Ohio State, every player is available. So I think this is the first time I've interviewed him since he's been at Ohio State, and just couldn't be more impressed with him. And this is on the heels of his coaches and his teammates just talking him up like crazy, that Dante Booker is going to be one of the breakout players of this team, and people saying things like, no disrespect to Josh Perry, but we think he can fill in and play just as well as Josh did. This is very encouraging. And then talking to Dante Booker, he said he was about 210 pounds 2 years ago when he reported, and under the Mickey Mariotti program, he's now about 235, and he looks solid. So I think it's time to get excited about Dante Booker. What are your thoughts, Bax?
I couldn't agree more. Of all the positions we're replacing, it's one of the least concerned positions that I have. We've heard for more than a year now that Dante Booker was very clearly Josh Perry's backup last year. He very clearly had figured things out. And one of the things that you always concern yourself about with linebacker recruits is, look, these guys are athletic freaks more often than not. I mean, look at Jerome Baker in the spring game, right? Booker was one of those guys who's like, athletically, you can't miss him. You have to figure, though, a big question is, have they figured out how to play linebacker? Do they follow their angles? Can they shed blocks? They know where to drop into coverage, right? Things that Raekwon McMillan did immediately on arriving on campus is something that not a lot of linebackers can do, just like we see Raekwon doing it. The good news is that you've heard nothing about Dante Booker other than saying he's able to figure it out in all facets of being a linebacker, right? that has me excited because it means you can leave him on the field. It means if other teams try to tempo us, Dante Booker will be in the right spot. Athletically speaking, Dante Booker is one of the most athletic linebackers, not just in the Big Ten, but the country. So he's one of the players this year that I feel like not a lot of people are talking about him, you know? Like everybody's talking about, oh, who's going to be the new corner? Who's going to catch the ball? Or, you know, is Michael Jordan going to start? You don't hear a lot of people going, man, that linebacker core with Booker and Worley taking over at the outside spots is going to be really good. Well, that's the truth. It's going to be really good. I've literally had zero concerns about the linebacker position this year for Ohio State since last season ended. It's like, okay, you're going to have Booker and you're going to have either Worley or Baker, and they're going to be awesome. There's the end. There's not really much debate on it. I'm really excited to finally get to see Booker in a game situation, but I have very few concerns about how just good he's going to be this season. Everything's setting up for him to have a really great season. And, hey, if you listen to the Boarding House, Dante Booker's expecting to have a really great season, and then maybe that's his only really great season at OSU, and as he lets his athletic talent take him to the next level. So I'm going to be very interested to see just how good Booker is this year, but I have very high expectations for him.
Great stuff out of the People's Champ, Matt Baxendell. You can catch his column every Sunday. The Bucket. Thanks again, Bax, and thank you to the listeners for tuning into the show. I appreciate it. Hope everyone has a great day. Let's hear some Buckeye swag, best damn band in the land.